The psychology behind Tinder. Social psychology is the branch of psychology that deals with social interactions, including their origins and their effects on the individual. Role-playing is when people take on a role or persona and act and react to situations with the mindset of the role that they are playing. So because on Tinder people can build their own profiles and upload whatever pictures they want and make up details about their jobs and hobbies and personalities, Tinder profiles can be super misleading. So while someone might find a man who looks really good in their pictures attractive, or a woman, they might be someone completely different than the identity that they've built for themselves. So it's very easy to create a new image of yourself on Tinder, and when people interact with each other, the role-playing will also continue. So therefore, Tinder can actually be kind of dangerous in a way. Foot in the door phenomenon is the tendency for people who have first agreed to a small request to comply later with a larger request. So on Tinder, you swipe right on a picture to like it, and if you swipe left, it means you're passing a person. So if they've also liked you, then it's a match, and you can start messaging. And so the messaging might start with like a simple conversation, but it could eventually lead to a relationship potentially. Conformity is adjusting one's behavior or thinking to coincide with a group standard. So people will conform to what people find attractive when making their profiles and when choosing the pictures that they decide to post on their profile. And people will try to appear as if they're humorous, have a good job. They'll post pictures of themselves smiling or doing interesting activities to make themselves seem more appealing and fun. And people want the most matches or right swipes, so they'll conform to what society thinks is attractive in order to do that. A stereotype is a generalized, sometimes accurate, but often overgenerated belief about a group of people. A few examples of stereotypes of profiles that someone might find on Tinder might be the frat star, the fish holder, or the hipster, but those are just a few examples. The mere exposure effect is the phenomenon that repeated exposure to a stimuli increases the liking of it. So the more you hang out with someone or talk to someone, the more you will like them. And this can be shown on Tinder because, when you first start messaging someone, you won't feel as strong of an attraction to them as when you talk to them more and more and get to know them and maybe even hang out with them eventually. Prejudice is an unjustifiable and usually negative attitude toward a group and its members. Prejudice usually involves stereotype beliefs, negative feelings, and a predisposition to discriminatory action. So, unfortunately, Tinder is full of prejudice, and studies have shown that popular traits on Tinder include tall men, Asian women, wealthy men, and warm women. So this reflects gender stereotypes, where men should be wealthy and successful, while women just need to be warm and nurturing. And people are also prejudiced based off of their looks. So Tinder is practically based purely off of looks and physical appearance. So personality isn't a large factor in matches, and unattractive people will get less matches even though they might, have a great personality. And people tend to try to be closer to people that are similar to them. So online dating kind of gives them that avenue to pick people with similar characteristics. So this also proves that opposites do not attract. And finally, people use Tinder to go through looking at pictures quickly, and they make snap judgments based off of the first photo of someone that they see. So it's super prejudiced, even if it's not necessarily always negative. Peripheral root persuasion is an attitude change path in which people are influenced by incidental cues, such as a speaker's attractiveness. So someone might get Tinder because they see an ad and it has two super attractive people who met and have like this great love story, and they think that they themselves can personally find that by getting Tinder. So that would be an example of being persuaded by the peripheral root persuasion. And someone may also feel compelled to message another person simply because of how attractive they appear to be with no other factors involved. Sensation is the process by which our sensory receptors and nervous system receive and represent stimulus energies from our environment, while perception is the process of organizing and interpreting sensory information, enabling us to recognize meaningful objects and events. So how do the eyes work? The cornea bends or refracts the rays that pass through the round hole of the pupil. The iris opens and closes, making the pupil bigger or smaller. This regulates the amount of light that passes through. The light rays then pass through the lens, which changes shape so that it can further bend the rays and focus them on the retina. The retina, which sits at the back of the eye, is a thin layer of tissue that contains millions of tiny light-sensing nerve cells. These nerve cells are called rods and cones because of their distinct shapes. Cones are concentrated in the center of the retina, in an area called the macula. When there is bright light, cones provide clear, sharp central vision and detect colors and fine details. Rods are located outside the macula and extend all the way to the outer edge of the retina. They provide peripheral or side vision. Rods also allow the eyes to detect motion and help us see in the dim light and at night. These cells in the retina convert the light into electrical impulses. The optic nerve sends these impulses to the brain, which produces an image. So obviously, Tinder is all about pictures, and our eyes are what allows us to actually see the pictures and find matches. But our pupils can dilate or constrict according to whether or not you like what you see. So your pupils will dilate when you see something you like because you want to grasp more of what you see and see more of it. And pupils will dilate when we're stimulated. And studies have even shown that people find dilated pupils more attractive than when they're constricted. So sensation is the process that allows our brain to take in information from our five senses, which is from vision, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. So on Tinder, we probably use all five, but 3 examples would be vision. Vision is what allows us to see the pictures and send signals to our brain to help us determine whether or not someone is attractive. Touch is when people swipe left or right. They feel the sensation of their finger against the screen, and they may also feel a vibration if they receive a message. And then hearing, we can hear the sound effects of Tinder's messaging technology. Top-down processing is information processing guided by higher-level mental processes, as when we construct perceptions drawing on our experience and expectations. So basically, your abstract impressions can influence the sensory data that you gather. And so when you look at someone's Tinder profile, you would look at the big picture rather than the smaller details. Bottom-up processing, on the other hand, is analysis that begins with the sensory receptors and works up to the brain's integration of sensory information. So when you use bottom-up processing on Tinder, you would first look at the small details and then work your way up to the big picture. Cognition and memory. Memory is the persistence of learning over time through the storage and retrieval of information, and cognition is all the mental activities associated with thinking, knowing, and remembering. Short-term memory is the activated memory that holds a few items briefly, such as the 7 digits of a phone number while dialing, before the information is stored or forgotten. Short-term memory lasts for about 30 seconds, while long-term memory is the relatively permanent and limitless storage house of the memory system. It includes knowledge, skills, and experiences. On Tinder, short-term memory might be used when someone's scrolling through pictures, and after seeing an image, they will shortly remember what the person looked like. And long-term memory might be more when people message each other. They'll learn things about each other and remember certain details about each other's hobbies and personalities and things like that. Cognition is all the mental activities associated with thinking, knowing, remembering, and communicating. So basically, when you do anything on Tinder, such as look at a picture or think of what to say in a message or type out a message, swipe left or right, really any of these actions are demonstrating cognition. A phoneme is the smallest distinctive sound unit in language. So a phoneme in the word Tinder would be t. And then a morpheme is the smallest unit that carries meaning. So it might be a word or a part of words, such as a prefix. So the morphemes in the word Tinder would be tin and der. Syntax is the collection of rules that allow us to form meaningful sentences. And so it's more about the sentence form, while semantics is the meaning of the actual words and sentences. So people will use syntax and semantics when they make their Tinder profile and they're trying to communicate things about them. And then syntax and semantics can also be used in the messaging because, in English there are certain rules that allow us to make sentences that have meaning and are effective when we're trying to communicate. Chunking is organizing terms into familiar, manageable units. Often it occurs automatically. So if someone were to message someone on Tinder and ask them for their number, when a person gives them their number, in order to remember each individual digit, they might use chunking to remember. So for example, the numbers 678-999-8212 could be broken into 3 groups: 678-999, and 8212. Research methods. When experimenting, research methods are needed to confirm theories and hypotheses. So, on an actual experiment done on Tinder, a 22-year-old named Alexa Mitchell wanted to test her theory that men on Tinder are more attracted to pictures of women with makeup and retouched skin rather than maybe the more natural no makeup look. So her hypothesis was that she would get more right swipes when she was wearing makeup and had retouched skin. So to test her hypothesis, her experiment would be swiping right on 100 men with first no makeup, and then swiping right on 100 men with retouched skin and makeup on. So then she would compare the number of swipes in return she got after about 5 hours. So her independent variable would be the picture that was used. The dependent variable is the number of swipes she received, and the experimental group is the men she swiped right on. So the results of the experiment showed that Alexa's hypothesis was right, because when Alexa was not wearing makeup, she only got 16 right swipes back, whereas when she was wearing makeup, she got almost 5 times as many right swipes back, which showed that the amount of makeup a woman wears does affect the amount of right swipes she gets. So Alexa may have experienced hindsight bias when she saw these results because her hypothesis was right, so she may have felt that she knew it all along. And if more women were to do the exact same experiment and have similar results to Alexa, it would show a positive correlation between the amount of right swipes a woman gets and whether or not she wears makeup. Developmental psychology is a branch of psychology that studies physical, cognitive, and social change throughout someone's lifespan. While gender is literally the biologically and socially influenced characteristics by which people define male and female, gender identity is someone's sense of being male or female, and gender roles is a set of expected behaviors for males or females. So on Tinder, for gender, you can choose whether you're male or female, and you can choose whether you want to find other males or females. And males have 1 Y chromosome and 1 X chromosome, whereas females have 2 X chromosomes. For gender identity, though someone might actually physically be a male, they could identify as a female. So there's a new button on Tinder where you choose your gender that says more, and you can enter what you want to describe yourself as or what you identify as. And then finally, for gender roles, if someone isn't necessarily attractive and they don't really conform to their gender roles, they won't get as many matches. Puberty is the period of sexual maturation in which a person becomes capable of reproducing. So Tinder isn't really for people who haven't hit puberty yet, it's more for older people and adults. Secondary sex characteristics are the non-reproductive sexual characteristics such as hair, male voice quality, someone's bone structure, etc. So when looking at someone's profile picture, you would be looking at their secondary sex characteristics such as like if a woman's hair looks nice or if a male has good facial structure. Identity is our sense of self. So when someone creates an identity for themselves while they're making a profile on Tinder or while they're typing their bio, they can display pictures of themselves and give interesting facts about their hobbies and talk about who they are and how they actually identify themselves as a person. And finally, intimacy is the ability to form a close, loving relationship with another person. So Tinder is a dating app, so it's all about intimacy and making relationships, and if you match with someone, there's a chance that you will eventually form an intimate relationship with them.